I don't get to pick and choose when I'm Spider-Man. I can't turn my back when people need me.
Our family doesn't give up.
Whenever you see Spider-Man, you always mean the other one. See you in a few weeks, Spider-Man. You're Spider-Man.
So when I picked up Spider-Man Miles Morales for about $75 at my nearest EB Games, and I traveled like an hour away from town to the next town over because I accidentally ordered the wrong EB Games, I did not think much about this game. But coming out of the game right now, Miles Morales is actually one of the best Spider-Man games ever made, and a major step up from Spider-Man PS4 in many respects, despite it even being a spin-off game. But it does suffer from a lot of flaws that tend to bring it down. Now, those who know me and talk to me know that I did not like Spider-Man PS4 very much. I think it's some major characterization issues with Peter, and hell, even some gameplay issues. But Spider-Man Miles Morales does Miles so well and does the gameplay so well. I'm glad to say Miles in this game is not as much as a shitty character as he was in Bendis' Spider-Man run, but he wasn't as great and amazing as he was in Into the Spider-Verse. I'd say this Miles lays firmly in between the Bendis Miles and the Into the Spider-Verse Miles. I will be doing a non-spoiler and spoiler review on this game, and I will cover the main three aspects of this game: gameplay, story, and money's worth. Please note, for review purposes, that I played this game on the hardest difficulty and was played on a PS4 Slim because I am poor and I am not buying a PS5. Even if I wanted to buy a PS5, I couldn't because apparently it just doesn't exist. The PS5 just doesn't exist. I can't get it anywhere. So I finished Spider-Man Miles Morales about an hour ago, and I have a lot of thoughts. But first, let's talk non-spoiler thoughts. Now, I may be a crackpot, flat earth conspiracy theorist about this, but the gameplay feels so much smoother than Spider-Man PS4. I'm not sure if they did any actual changes in optimization, but the web-sling animations and the web zipping felt way smoother than it did in Spider-Man PS4. The Venom traversal abilities of Venom Dash and Venom Jump adds a small but appreciated layer to the web sling. Unlike Spider-Man PS4, I never wanted to fast travel. I actually preferred to be able to swing from location to location using my Venom Dash in tandem with my web zips in order to go at Mach 5 speed. It felt silky smooth, but then again, I may be just some crackpot crazy person, and they actually made no changes to the web sling whatsoever, and I'm just fucking crazy. The combat was fantastic. Hot take incoming, but the combat in this game is leagues better than Spider-Man PS4. Spider-Man's PS4 combat was clunky and jarring. Spider-Man Miles Morales, they shift focus more on the combat and less on the gadgets, only giving you 4 gadgets and 4 of each gadget, which even at the hardest difficulty, I barely used unless I was really stuck. Instead, the focus of the combat is in Venom and the camouflage abilities. I prefer this, as the Venom and camouflage abilities flowed way better than the gadgets in Spider-Man PS4. Instead of selecting a gadget, pressing R1 and then taking advantage of whatever gadget it is and spamming punch, Miles Morales takes more skill to master, and it's way more smooth. You'll be needing to use different Venom abilities for different enemies, and sometimes you can even chain together Venom abilities with gadgets or whatever you choose to make smooth and deadly combos. You could do a Venom Dash, go into camouflage, then pull a Venom Punch from behind in order to do extra damage. Or you could do a Venom Jump, combo it with a Floor Yank, and then a Venom Slam. There are a ton of combos and abilities you can mix and match with and explore with to fit your style of gameplay and what types of enemies you're fighting. Because not all Venom abilities work on every enemy. Some Venom abilities only work on specific enemies. For example, you can only do a Venom Dash while fighting the Underground Sword Fighter. This allows combat to flow better and adds more layers to this combat. With each move translating into the next move, you need to think of your steps and moves ahead of time, rather than spamming gadgets and then spamming punch. I believe it requires more precision and more thought to it, as the Venom abilities aren't as strong as the gadgets in Spider-Man PS4. Unlike Spider-Man PS4, every gadget in Spider-Man Miles Morales has its own specific place within the sandbox, and they each complement each other nearly perfectly, with each having its own pros and cons for any given situation. While in Spider-Man PS4, the game hands you this power fantasy. It hands you all the gadgets that you need. In Miles Morales, just like Miles, you have to earn this power fantasy. You have to earn the title of Spider-Man by learning your Venom combos, your gadgets, and your skill sets. Speaking of skill sets, let's talk about skill trees and suit mods. I felt like a lot of the combat aspects within the skill trees and suit mods just ended up being useless. I changed my suit mods like twice and I never used them again because it barely affected my gameplay, with one of them like giving me 2% more moisture in my diarrhea or whatever. The skill tree was very lackluster and, to be honest, completely boring. I didn't use 70% of the stuff I unlocked. The combat was dog shit easy even at the highest difficulty, and I'm not even like a top 10 Grandmaster MLG Pro player, but I still found it easy, dying less than 5 times in my entire playthrough. The game totally needed a difficulty boost because, Spider-Man PS4 was also super easy and this was a well-known problem, and yet they didn't fix this. In general, the combat is really fun and is a complete step up, but it is way too easy and the skill trees and suit mods feel nearly useless as I barely utilize that aspect, nor did it give me any reason to utilize the aspect. The next part I'll be covering is a story. This is going to be hard to talk about without any spoilers, so the non-spoiler section will be fairly short. This is my second favorite adaptation of Miles Morales. I thought Miles in the PS4 game kinda sucked and didn't really do anything. And oh god, comic version by Bendis is, oh my god. It's so bad. It's horrible. He has no character at all and he's just pure trash. But in this game, he only falls short to the Into the Spider-Verse Miles Morales. Because, nobody can beat that. It's just such a good movie. This Miles is everything I wanted from Miles. A Spider-Man learning to crawl. New York's only Spider-Man. I truly believe Miles is at his best when he's the only Spider-Man around, because it allows him to undergo his own journey and own character uninterrupted by Peter Parker's much larger and, sometimes better shadow.
I'm New York's only Spider-Man. It's only Spider-Man. Please don't screw this up.
The game struck a good balance between that, finding a reasonable way to get rid of Peter Parker while still having a good amount of Spider-Man Easter eggs, calling back to the previous game, reminding you that this is the same world as the last game, a world with Peter Parker, a world with Spider-Man. The characters that inhabit this world and that are a part of Miles' life are great. I really felt the personality of Miles and the characters that surround him were spot on. It really made me feel like Miles was Spider-Man, not some Spider-Man legacy character, but his own Spider-Man, with his own responsibilities, his own personalities, and his own view of the world. I also didn't mind the Tinker swap and major change from the comics, but I'm not a big Tinker fan, so I digress. The pacing of the game, though, it's way off. It's not very good. It's to the point where it's nearly jarring. But with a game with the average playtime of 10 hours and only about 17 missions, I didn't expect much else. It just feels off because with the story they were trying to tell, it needed more time, but they didn't have the time. It never really felt like it was building up to anything because it had to pay it off for the next mission or else it wouldn't have time to tell what it was trying to tell. I really wish this game was longer because the pacing was not very good and nothing ever got time to settle in. I never felt like I had time to breathe, understand the world, or let the story settle in my soul. I never understood where everything was after the events of Spider-Man PS4 because it just whacks you right into the action and right into Miles' story without a second to waste.
Bro. Jack? The hell?
But man, were there moments in this game that just made me smile cheek to cheek and go, yeah, that's fucking Spider-Man. Miles' character changes and develops like a proper human being that makes human choices that make sense and aren't done just to make him relatable, unlike what they did with Peter in Spider-Man PS4. Slight tangent here, but it really comes off as incompetent in Spider-Man PS4. How can Peter Parker, a man who's been Spider-Man for 8 years, manage to still balance his life so poorly he can't do something as simple as pay his goddamn rent?
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
At least Miles' stupid actions are justified. He's only learning to crawl, and he's figuring out this stuff for the first time. Also, quick side note about the skins, just in case you wanted to hear about it. The skins in this game are excellent. It's not as big of a selection as, say, in Spider-Man PS4, and a good amount of them are actually original skins, but it makes sense since Miles has been around for even less than a decade, and so the amount of suits and designs that he's had are very minimal when comparing him to Peter Parker. Now, on to the most important question. Is this game worth your money? Short answer, not really. Unless you're like me and you're a massive Spider-Man fan or a massive Miles Morales fan. Or if you're a PS5 owner, because if you're a PS5 owner, you're probably rich enough to get the game without even thinking about it. Or you just live like that. The game left a lot to be desired gameplay-wise. It is very, very short, and once you're done, there's not really much else to do other than to start again with a new game plus. I think that even for a side game, the 75 Canadian dollars that I paid was way too much and way too steep, and at its very most, it should have been around like 50 Canadian dollars. I get it, since apparently PS5 games are more expensive to develop or whatever bullshit they keep on saying. I'd say, once again, if you're a big Spider-Man fan, and if for some reason you're one of like the 5 people that actually like Miles Morales from the comics, then you should get this game. Other than that, just wait till it gets on sale in a couple months or so.
Give you the right to. Remember, with great power comes
The exaggerated swagger of a black teen. It gives me goosebumps every time he does it.
Now, onto the spoiler review. Since I went through most of this in the non-spoiler review, I will only talk about my thoughts on the story, side quests, other miscellaneous things I've decided to talk about. First, let's talk about the story. It's okay, it's alright. It's nothing special, but it's nothing horrible either. I love how Miles gets to feel like his own person here. He gets to shine on his own without the shadow of Peter Parker. That's where my statement about how I feel that Miles works better when he's on his own comes from. The few complaints I'd have to say is the pacing and how the reveals never get to sit in with you. For example, when you meet Finn for the first time, the second mission after you meet her, you already find out she's the Tinkerer. When that reveal happened, it didn't hit me as hard because I don't care for Finn. It didn't make me ask questions. It didn't make me question Finn's character. I didn't know her enough to be shocked or to feel anything. Let's compare this with Martin Lee in Spider-Man PS4, which was done slightly better. Martin Lee is built up as this nice, good, kind-hearted person who runs a homeless shelter. It gives us a reason to care. It tells us who Martin is. So, when it's revealed he's actually Mr. Negative and kills people on the side, it shocks you and it makes you feel something. But with the Tinkerer, it's like, okay, wow, it's Finn. I know nothing about Finn, so I don't really care. I don't know who Finn is, what she does, and why I should care that she's the Tinkerer. The same applies to the Prowler reveal. I'm glad the Prowler got more focus, since the Prowler is literally Miles' only good villain, hands down, because he's complex and interesting. Aaron's arc in the story was even great, but his reveal that he was the Prowler never set in, because we only met Aaron once before this point. We don't get to know who Aaron is and see who he is. His dark past is only mentioned like once. Instead of it being built up and then revealed, it's just handed to you. The story is good. I wish though Roxxon had less of a focus in this story, because Simon Krieger and Roxxon as a company doesn't play that much of a big emotional role. It challenges Spider-Man in no way. Simon Krieger is just this generic, give me all the money, I like the money, I am greedy bad guy with no redeeming values. He doesn't challenge Spider-Man on a physical or idealistic level. He's just pure evil, and that's it. He's a mustache-twirling evil dude. His only characteristic is the dude likes money.
Smell like next level bioengineering, and you know what that smells like to me, kid? That smells like money.
The Tinkerer, on the other hand, is actually well developed, understandable and human. Her redemption arc is good, but it was kind of generic and it was pretty predictable. I felt like I actually understood her character. She was a person with good intentions, but a person filled with rage and revenge, blinding them, leading to their intentions being paved into destruction. All the power with none of the responsibility to help, save, and protect. That mirrors Miles, who will stop at nothing to protect and save the city, even if it means fighting his own uncle and his best friend.
Why do you keep fighting?
Because I'm Spider-Man.
You don't realize I'm the only one trying to save you.
And I'm trying to save everyone else.
Speaking of which, the boss fights in this game were amazing. They're some of the most fun boss fights I've ever played in. The Prowler fight and the Tinkerer fight were granted pretty easy, but they had me smiling the entire way. And the speech Miles gives to his uncle is spectacular. It felt real, it felt emotional, it felt like how Spider-Man should be.
Doesn't have to be like this. You, me, hating each other. That's how it happened between me and your dad. I don't want to repeat that.
I don't either. But I can't be the person you want to turn me into. I can't turn my back when people need me. I have to be better than that.
However, I felt that characters like Ryo and Ganke didn't serve much to the story other than being small plot devices or cheap reveals. The whole reveal of identity to his mom came off way too early, and now there's not really anywhere to go. His entire family now knows that he's Spider-Man, and it was just sort of glossed over completely. There was no heart-to-heart speech. There's nothing. Ryo just seems to be indifferent about her own son putting his life on the line. There's no fear about her needing to bury another loved one. Instead, all the emotion, all the passion that should be Ryo's is put into Aaron. Which is fine, but it just doesn't make sense about how Miles' uncle actually cares more about him than his own goddamn mom.
Throw yourself at enemies you can't beat. Know who else did that?
Don't say his name!
You want your mom to bury you too? I won't let you.
Now let's talk about the ending. The ending was done well. It tied up Aaron's arc and Finn's arc, putting a nice little bow on everything, and it even gave Miles his own Spider-Man 2 moment, where he truly becomes the people's Spider-Man, and that final line where the dude says,
That guy? He's our Spider-Man.
made me cheer, because it was just executed so well. Even though it does seem weird because Peter Parker's Spider-Man is also the people's Spider-Man, and he's a street-level character. This is again where the issue arises where having two Spider-Men doesn't work because two people can't fill the same role of being a street-level neighborhood hero. This paints it like Peter's Spider-Man is less of a street hero and less of a part of a community, which is totally not the case. If Miles was the only Spider-Man, this line would have hit far stronger. I also love the final talk with Pete at the end, where we can really see the effect that the game's story has had on Miles, and harken back to that one scene from Into the Spider-Verse.
Miles, the hardest thing about this job is you can't always save everybody.
It made me very excited for the sequel and what Insomniac is going to do moving on from here. Speaking of the sequel, the post-credit scene is done pretty well. It teases a lizard and I think Venom? I don't know what to think about Harry being Venom because obviously we haven't seen anything. But just from the scene, I think Harry is a layered and compelling character, and by making him Venom, you're taking away things that make Harry and Venom interesting, and you're compromising them to make him into one inferior character. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what Insomniac does with Spider-Man 2. The set pieces and boss fights are some of the best shit I've ever seen in any superhero video game. That final fight on top of Roxxon was great, and the cinematics had me cheering. That final talk where Finn and Miles say goodbye was delivered perfectly and emotionally. That Rhino fight had me on the edge of my seat and took actual trying, and the bridge set piece is one of the best, one of the most grand set pieces I've ever played in a superhero game, and Miles holding the bridge together gave me literal chills. It gave me the feeling, the risk that a novice Spider-Man should give you, the uncertainty of skill and experience that a learning to crawl Spider-Man should have. This, along with the music, the beautiful, beautiful music, crafted such an amazing experience. John Pacino can literally do no wrong. First, he knocked it out with a Daredevil score, then came back and made one of the best Spider-Man themes, and then crafted a perfect, amazing, spectacular Miles Morales theme, possibly even better than Daniel Pemberton's Into the Spider-Verse theme. Miles Morales is a greater game than Spider-Man PS4 is. It's a marvelous game, but it also suffers from a lot of flaws in every aspect still. Sure, it's a major step up, but it still has a lot of growing to do and a lot of learning to do, just like Miles himself. And one day, I hope Insomniac can make a completely stellar game that stands tall next to Spider-Man 2, Shattered Dimensions, and Ultimate Spider-Man. Thank you guys for watching, and if you liked the video, please consider checking out my other videos, liking, or subscribing. And if you're wondering why I sound so different in this video, it's probably because my allergies are killing me right now, and I am sniffling and my nose is plugged like hell. I just want to thank everybody for watching this video. It means so much to me that you even clicked on this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.